Please allow me to introduce you my father, Oswaldo Paya. This man dedicated his life to helping others. He was a physicist, a telecommunication engineer, and the last 25 years of his life, he worked fixing electronic devices in the intensive care units of the hospital of Havana. But outside his daily job, he dedicates his efforts to the promotion of human rights in the island. His objective was to transform our society for the better. And in the middle of this peaceful fight, he was killed 4 years ago by the Cuban regime. To be the daughter of my father, and to know Oswaldo Payá not just as a Democrat, not just as a thinker, but as a loving father, was my greatest fortune. My father was the kind of person you want to be close to. I could always go in with any possible doubt. And at the same time, he was always optimistic and joyful. Like, no problem was big enough if I could tell my daddy. And of course, we were family, suffering from a totalitarian regime, the longest dictatorship that America has ever experienced. But inside my house, we could be free. And my father made me understand that we could carry that freedom in our mind and in our actions. Actually, that was kind of funny because my friends in the school and in the university that didn't experience the threats and the tensions that we suffered, they kind of envy because I could say whatever I want, while then were forced by their parents to pretend to defend the revolution out of fear. But what my parents always told me was, you say what you think, and we'll take care of it later. So I have the privilege to growing up as a free person in the middle of a society that is still a prison. My father was the founder of the Varela Project. The Varela Project is so far the only independent and massively supported petition of law in order to guarantee human rights in the island in half a century. Why? Because we, Cubans, we cannot choose the way we want to live our life. We cannot say what we wish. We cannot choose our leaders. We cannot even decide our workplace after finishing university. And my father not just exposed all this reality. He proposed a plan to transform it and to go through a democratic transition to a democratic and to a prosperous country. And his proposal became popular within the Cuban citizenry. And the regime realized that Oswaldo Payá embodied the national alternative because he had a plan. And his plan is constitutional and used the rules of the regime against the regime itself. His work gained him many honors. He is a Sakharov Prize winner. He was 5 times nominated to the Nobel Peace Prize. I started to work with him when I was in the university, and we created a team of young people to work closely with him. We started to work in a newsletter, and I just want to call your attention for a second to this young guy here. He is Harold Cepero, my friend. He died the same day of my father, the day in which the first number of the newsletter that we call Somos Liberación, which means we are liberation, was set ready to be published. I just want to quote one of the phrases that Harold wrote, and he didn't live to see it published. He says that we Cubans, or those Cubans that dares to confront the regime, that dares to live in the truth, that dares to join the opposition or the civil society, those Cubans are risking loneliness, isolation, prison, or death. And that was exactly what happened to my father and to my friend. We are still asking for an independent investigation. We are still fighting for a proper investigation, but I could tell you what I know that happened. What we know for sure is that my father, Harold, and 2 foreign friends were traveling in a car, and they have been followed by other cars of the Cuban state security. In some point of the road, the car of the state security hit their car to run it out of the road in order to stop it. After that, the state security agents took my friend Harold and the 2 foreigners to the hospital. And there, in the hospital, they refused medical attention to Harold Cepero. And my friend, 32 years old, died in a Cuban hospital, completely abandoned. My father remained in the crime scene and was probably there where the agents of the state security execute him. My family has suffered for a long time now the repression of the Cuban regime. I remember to feel a mix of pride and embarrassment when my mother first took me to see the front of my house after a repudiation act, after an assault of the state security that they did just as a warning to my father. This word there means worm, gusano. That's the label that the Cuban regime used to name those who dare to live in the truth, who dares to confront the regime. The last year of the life of my father was a particularly frightening one. His assassination was not an isolated attack. My father suffered at least 2 potentially deadly attacks before July 2012. The first one was in his workplace when an oxygen pipe exploded just as he touched it in a very mysterious way. The second one was in the road when another car crashed into his car, and it was by a pure miracle that my mother and my father didn't die that day. This was a picture taken a few minutes after the second attack. But the goal of the Cuban state security is not just, or was not just, to kill my father. They also want to kill his legacy. That's why they continue threatening us, menacing my family, and attacking the whole Cuban democratic opposition movement. I want to show you what happened to me 2 years ago in Geneva, in the United Nations, when the Cuban ambassador interrupted me when I was just talking about the case of my father.
Pero era necesario interrumpir la intervención, la mercenaria que ha osado venir a esta sala. Y queremos preguntarle, señor presidente, si este debate del tema 4 es para referirse a cuestiones generales que puedan demostrar un patrón de violaciones de derechos humanos, o también se presta para abordar cuestiones específicas como lo está haciendo la mercenaria que está haciendo uso de la palabra en este momento. Tenemos esa inquietud, señor presidente, y nos agradeceríamos que nos las aclare y que también ilustre a la mercenaria que está haciendo esta intervención. Muchas gracias.
Mercenary, that's the label the Cuban regime used against us out of the country, as they use it here with the so-called protesters that they sent to protest against my freedom of speech today. But I just want you to think, if this regime is ready to talk with this kind of despotism in the middle of United Nations, just imagine what they are ready to do inside the island to silence the whole population. But you know what? I know a lot of Cubans that don't want to be silenced. And I know that all of us want to have a voice. That's why we launched the campaign Cuba Decides, which means Cuba Decides. And our objective is to force the authority to recognize the right that all Cubans have to determine their own system using one specific tool, a Biden plebiscite, to determine their future for first time in almost 60 years. Of course, this campaign is a continuation of the legacy of my father. He was the first one in launching the campaign for a plebiscite, even after the massive repression against the Varela Project, even after the Cuban regime arbitrarily changed the constitution to make the system, which is the same thing that the repression, irrevocable. But not even the constitution is above the will of the people. And even the constitution needs the consent of the people. And that's precisely what the Cuban regime has ever had, the consent of the people. Because we, the Cuban people, we never choose the totalitarian regime. We never elect the group of generals in power for 57 years now. That's why I have a very concise petition for you today. I ask you, please, to support the right to decide of the Cuban people, the right that we, as a people, have to decide our own future. And I'm not asking you this because I know you are a generous crowd. I'm not asking you this just as an altruistic gesture. I'm asking you this because of the toxicity of the Cuban regime also. Because everybody knows that the interference of the Cuban regime has ruined also the rest of the region. And it's very related with the deterioration of the democracy in several countries in Latin America now. And it's very related also with the high level of impunity in the region and in my country. So to help the democracy in Cuba, I truly believe that it's also to support the democracy in the region, and it's also something that you could be doing for the sustainability of the democracy in a global level. In these times when Obama, the Pope, and even Mick Jagger walks by the streets of Havana, and the Cuban regime has the cynicism to use these symbols of freedom, or at least these symbols of the free world, to sell an image of positive transition without actually changing at all. I ask you to engage with Cuba, but to engage with my country with the same approach that my father proposed a few years ago. He said, if you want to extend a helping hand to the Cuban people, you must first ask for the Cuban people to have their hands untied, to be able to stretch yours. Please, ask for the Cubans the same freedom, the same rights that you enjoy today. Support Cuba Decides, support our right to decide our future. Thank you so much.